Welcome everyone. Thanks for joining us for today's episode of Canal Days. As always, I'm your host, Carrie, here with my co-host, founder of Historical Tours of Greater Holyoke, Robert Como. Our Canal Days series delves into the vast collection of historical sites throughout Massachusetts, with Robert's expertise of the local history as our personal guide. Each episode, we uncover history throughout local communities, highlighting historic landmarks and uncovering their seminal significance. Today's episode will be discussing and learning about the historic features along the Manhan Rail Trail of Easthampton, Massachusetts. So, the Manhan Rail Trail was once part of the New Haven and Northampton Canal Railroad. Can you inform us on how this rail line supported Easthampton's 19th century industrial boom, especially the textile and button mills?
Came up to where Samuel Williston had put his mills. The button mill was right on Cottage Street, and then the Glendale Elastic Band mill was right there too, and the train station was right off of that area, and it was a nice train station. And nowadays the Manhan Rail Trail is over that portion of the railroad line, and that's part of the reason why it's a very straight bike trail and it's very flat, because it's right over a former rail bed almost the entire length. So those two industries made Easthampton boom in the 1800s. It was an agricultural town before that turned into a mill town, when a lot of mills would come in and a lot of worker homes would come in, and thus you needed lots of schools, churches, stores, so forth. And that made Easthampton into a much more vibrant economy. There's another node of mills further down towards the north and still on the bike trail, and those are where Eastworks are, for instance, and lots of worker homes around that area, including New City and the Pleasant Street, and then lots of mills, the big series of mills near Eastworks, and then across the street from the Bike Pass parking lot, there was another big mill area there. And these mills needed water power, and that's why they backed up the reservoirs that they did, the Wilton Reservoir, and then the Neshawanik, and then the lower and upper mill ponds. So this made Easthampton boom into an industrial city and thus into an immigrant city. So a lot of the Catholics, Irish, and from Ireland and from Quebec would flood into the area, and then the Polish would come later.
And the trail today runs about 6 miles through Easthampton, but originally was a busy rail corridor. What kinds of goods and materials were transported along this line, and why was it so vital to the local economy?
There's a lot of fabric covered buttons, which was Samuel Wilson's favorite material, and other kinds of buttons. And then also elastic bands, elastic strings as part of clothing. And then at the other mills, many products were made, especially after he gave it up. Another company came in town called the West Boylston Company, and they made cotton products. So the economy boomed, and they had to transport supplies into the area. So a lot of cotton, a lot of rubber, and then they had to finished products to take out, so finished clothing, and then also finished elastic bands, so forth, and buttons. So in and out with the railroads going up this line and then out, and this line still is quite visible the whole way along that bike path.
Are you fascinated by local history and eager to investigate the obscure treasures off the beaten path throughout the state of Massachusetts? Or maybe just seeking an unforgettable cultural activity for family and friends to enjoy? Look no further than Historical Tours of Greater Holyoke, founded by Robert Como. With over a decade of experience, Robert offers captivating tours and presentations of historic sites and landmarks throughout the state. Whether you're interested in canals, cemeteries, charming churches, or more, Robert's Tours provide a unique and enriching experience for all. And that's not it. You can also schedule a private tours tailored to your interests, ensuring a personalized adventure and unforgettable memories. Perfect for families or groups of all sizes, making for an exciting hands-on learning experience that brings history to life. Simply visit hoyokecanaltour.org or email bobcat4214, capital B, at yahoo.com to book your private tour today. So getting back to our episode on the historical features along the Manhan Rail Trail of Easthampton, Massachusetts, when the railroad was abandoned, the land was transformed into a recreational trail. What does this change tell us about Easthampton's shift from an industrial hub to a community focused on conservation and recreation?
Yes, there's lots of recreational areas and conservation areas in Easthampton, including the whole Mount Tom Range, and then a lot of wonderful parks, and including the Nonotuck Park, so forth. Now, right along the rail trail, there's a whole new industry growing of malls, right? And also at the northern extreme, there's the Oxbow, which is a big recreation place, a lot of boats going there. And then right across the parking lot at the north end of the Manhan Rail Trail is the Connecticut River, which you can get to from Easthampton if you go on the Oxbow boat ramp. Right? And there's Arcadia, which is Acadia is a place where you can go bird watching and hiking, so forth and so on. All right. Then there's a nice park right along in back of Eastworks and attached to the Manhan Rail Trail. All right, and then you come to Williston Academy, and North Fields are right on the bike trail also. And the Nonotuck Park and Daly Park are very close at hand too. So there's a lot of recreation around the area. And Easthampton knew that, so when they built up this rail trail about 20 years ago with federal grant money, they knew that Easthampton was becoming a certain type of community. In fact, they expanded upon the rail trail. They added a spike that goes from the Manhan Rail Trail and towards the Northampton to Hadley to Amherst Rail Trail. And so now you can go complete on it. And that spike partly goes over the old Farmington to Hampshire and Hampton Canal that was built 200 years ago. So there's a lot of history around this area, and I hope you appreciate it very much.
And in 2020, the Manhan Rail Trail was designated a National Recreation Trail. Why was this significant, and how does it connect Easthampton local history to the broader story of the American Rail Trail projects?
All right, it does connect. I just told you the connection, and you can imagine you can get on your bike on the Easthampton near the Southampton border and ride your bike about 20 miles before you run out of rail trails. It goes all the way through these many communities and onwards. And they want to expand it even more so that someday you can go through Southampton, connect to the one in Westfield, which goes to the Southwick one, which connects out to the Farmington one in Connecticut itself, and then you'd have an extremely long connection. You could stay on your butt for 50 miles without ever getting off. And so thus, it's wonderful. Now, along the way, they kept history in place, and I'm going to hopefully do a bike rail trail history tour, where you can start at one end and visit all these historical places along the way, including the depot itself, the Pleasant Street Mills, the Cottage Street area in Mills. You can see the spike off of it, and then even the Easthampton trolley line, former trolley line, crossed it at one point. And then there was the farms. And then there was Mount Tom Station area where The Underwood family lived and they prospered, and they even had a post office in that area. And there's also a lot of nature along the way. So there's a lot of conservation land within Easthampton, and there's a lot of nature preserves, and there's a lot of farmland. So almost this whole bike trail is different along the entire length, and you can see a lot of different areas.
And thank you for tuning in to our episode on the historical features along the Manhan Rail Trail of Easthampton, Massachusetts, and joining us on our journey through the rich history of the Connecticut River Valley. We hope you enjoyed uncovering some of the hidden and overlooked marvels that shaped our past in the state of Massachusetts. A special thanks to Robert Camus, founder of Historical Tours of Greater Holyoke, for sharing his passion and expertise with us. Remember, you can find more information about Robert's tours, book private tours, and explore the Canal Days video and podcast series at holyokecanaltour.org. If you enjoyed today's episode, please like, comment, and share. We'd love to hear your thoughts and suggestions for future episodes. Thanks for listening, and don't forget to tune to our next episode of Canal Days. Until next time.